when I look at your set, right, you have become more intense.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And that scares you?
I, okay. There are times I just don't know how to differentiate between the real act versus the one that's off stage.
um, yeah, well, that's a good place to start.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's funny. It's funny to hear that. I'm definitely a combination of intense and silly and whimsical. That's probably a good description of what I do. There's portions of my act that are intense, and if I'm making some sort of point about society or culture, excuse me, that I have an opinion on that I'm trying to make in a funny way, there can be an intensity behind it. Yeah, for sure. And then if I'm just talking about like shitting my pants, it's less intense. Obviously, it's a funny story, that a personal thing that happened to me. So yeah. But I think as you get older, you're better able as a comedian and probably as a person to show different colors of yourself, of your personality. So I think that's probably something that has happened, in terms of feeling more comfortable to go different places.
Because I miss comics like that, right? I grew up with comics like you guys, like your generation of comics where it's like a Mark Maron, you where Colin Quinn, right? Comics were usually slightly more leaning towards the intense side of things, right? They generally go a lot more personal, right? Then and now kind of like leaning towards the other side of the other end of the spectrum as well, right? So I'm like, oh, okay. When we came out of the senior class of Earth, I'm like, wow, that's a comedy that I kind of miss. I didn't know it like I thought it went away.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Um, yeah, that's an interesting question, because I almost wonder to what extent the nature of the business informs what is being done, by comedians culturally.
Mm.
So I think comedians see that, maybe talking about politics or talking about the state of the world or some aspect of culture can be not only polarizing, but can cost you work with specific venues. Like for instance, I had pitched Senior Class of Earth to Netflix, and I felt pretty confident that it was going to get picked up, but they passed on it. And I knew the person, the executive, because we had worked together years ago on my Comedy Central specials, on two Comedy Central specials. So I kind of felt like that prior relationship would put me in good position to have this one. I guess that's like 3 specials ago now, but not that long. What was it, 2018, 17, something like that. But I felt like confident. But the person said no. They passed on it with no real explanation. So it kind of left me wondering. I mean, it's the nature of the business, so it's not like I'm saying poor me or anything, but it's the nature of the business that you don't know, even after 20, at that point, 25 years plus in the business, nothing's a sure thing, So yeah, it left me wondering, was that part of the reason why, like, Netflix did not want to pick up something that was a commentary on, like, socio-political commentary, even though the special I think was like 50-50, but some of it was biting commentary, and like you said, stuff that maybe harkens back to past generations a little bit.
Because I'm thinking along lines where, because I hear so many horror stories from about the business in America, right? For the show business, right? And it kind of like give me a very bad impression, right? You have because I hear comics like that comics like, I'm not sure whether you know Christopher Titus, where he talks about his sitcom getting pushed, canceled, and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
like hearing stories from your side as well, like pitching up to like, has anyone ever unlocked the secret behind like the show business kind of like thing?
It's a mystery. There's no secret, I don't think. The secret is to keep going. That's really the secret, because you can drive yourself crazy if you try to figure it out or rationalize, or because ultimately you're going to do what you do. So for me, that's what I do. That's part of what I do. So I'm not going to change and say like, oh, let me try to figure out what Netflix wants, and try to do that. I mean, that's ridiculous at this point. I wouldn't try to do that.
Mm.
So yeah, it's frustrating, because I feel, like I've earned my place over the course of my career, that, a venue like that would want my special.
Mm.
So it's frustrating. It's humbling, but it's also just a reminder of, that's the business, man. Like, you have to figure out, and those types of rejections oftentimes have given me the opportunity to explore, like, what can I do on my own
Mm.
to release it, to promote it, to try to figure out an alternate kind of path.
Because so because I'm looking at it at the point of like a business thing where we just like, oh, all right, so an executive would think like how this business should be run on, and there are a bunch of people who are like, let's do this independently and see how it goes from there. Eh, but at the idea of having someone else who knows what they are doing, who's like an executive who thinks that they knows what they are doing, who we perceive like they might know what they're doing, getting more marketing structure, getting more structure in marketing and wise, while having the small guys running an independent thing, right? Trying to put out stuff, right? It's kind of like and hey, this may work, this may not work, and may not get in any marketing kind of thing, right? And I think it's kind of shame sometimes, because there are good stuff that they got buried.
Yeah, I mean, it's the human element of any business, right? It's going to come down to a person's opinion, and in this business, a handful of people's opinion. So there's a group of people at Netflix, there's a group of people at Amazon, or HBO, wherever the kind of higher level destinations for a special would be. So it depends on their opinion of you as the performer. It also is largely informed by the relationship they may or may not have with your representation, your manager, your agent. A lot of it has to do with that too, if they have like long-standing relationships, friendships. So that's really outside of you as a performer. That's like you walk into the room with your manager and agent, and they're all friends and they're very chummy. So that, that could inform things too. And I don't have a manager or agent at this point. I've had them in the past, but the last maybe 5 years or so, I haven't. I've been working solo. So, that probably in some instances shoots me in the foot a little bit, because I would get in the door with, maybe they see you a little bit as being outside the system, or that that you're not playing by the rules. You don't have someone bringing you into the room. I just emailed the person directly because I have a relationship with them, but maybe they're like, that's not how it works, so I don't know. And I don't care. I make decisions kind of based on what feels right for me. It's like, I've done that in the past where I got representation just because I thought like, okay, I got to play by the rules. I have a new special coming up, or I had Teachers Lounge coming up, my web series. And I was like, all right, let me play by the rules and get representation, and, let other people do their job in terms of selling it. But it was, it's a mixed experience. So there's always a give and take.
So which one would you prefer then? Like because I'm doing this out of my own, like everything is on my own right now as well, right? And I used to have someone to that we kind of share like what we want. Then he moved back to like me doing everything alone right now. So I don't know how to feel about like I like the free, like the full autonomy when it comes to like working on my own, right? I can do whatever you want and stuff like that, but I do not have time to finance this whole thing, right? Like I have to work on stuff to sell it, and everything's coming out from my own pocket and stuff like that. While
Sure.
having someone to help is like, oh, like everything is kind of halved, right? Like all the workload has kind of like is down into like small manageable sizes where I can do some stuff on my own as well.
Yeah. It's a trade-off, like
Mm,
sometimes those types of situations you can blossom because, the other person leaves or, circumstances just kind of wind up where there's a change in the roles that you have to assume or the hats that you have to wear.
mm,
So I've had that happen over the years too. And, again, getting back to those relationships with industry managers, agents, as those kind of ebbed and flowed or reached their peak, and that like I kind of saw, if they had bigger clients than me, that would happen occasionally too, where part of the business is you have to look at it through their eyes too. A lot of these managers, they're kind of accruing a stable of talent,
mm,
and they're hoping that somebody breaks big. So when somebody does, that's their focus. So I had that happen with me a few times where I was with, Kevin James and
mm,
Joe Rogan's manager. And he was a great manager he was my first manager for the early part of my career.
mm,
But I just saw a shift. Like once those guys broke big, like I was kind of left by the
mm,
wayside a bit, and I felt like I wasn't a priority. And I was still just doing comedy clubs in Michigan or something, and he's doing Hollywood movies with these guys or doing big TV shows. So I felt like, and then you're kind of left with the decision, and it's reminiscent of a relationship in a way,
mm,
where there comes that point where you decide like, do I want to just stay with this person because I'm with someone? It's someone to be with.
uh-huh.
And also the proximity of like, well, it's Kevin James's manager and it's Joe Rogan's manager, but it's like, well, he's my manager too. And if I feel like I'm not getting the attention I deserve, so I had to make those decisions along the way a few times.
Mm,
And I always kind of just chose to follow my gut, and if
mm,
my gut told me like, you do deserve more attention, or you do deserve like the respect, that what you're navigating is just as important in its own way as anyone else. So those are hard decisions to make because, I have plenty of comedian friends who stay with managers who ignore them, who like, um, you know, like things pop up, or, they get the occasional, job or gig or TV
mm,
thing. But I hear them complaining like, yeah, I can't get them on the phone, or like they don't really, the communication's not good.
mm,
And when those things happen with me, I always just left. I was like, I'm not going to like stick in a relationship that causes me like frustration. And not to say that I leave immediately either. I try to talk it through first and say like, here's where I'm coming from.
mm,
It's not like I don't think I'm like irrational. I try to first communicate like, these are my issues or things that like any relationship, you want to communicate. But when there comes to the point where I'm not seeing progress, I'm content with moving on.
mm. Because I'm looking at red flags when it comes to relationships in any form, right? I just started therapy, so I'm like looking at red flags.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, how do I deal with red flags like this? Like when do I know like is the reasonable choice of saying goodbye and or cutting off any relationship and stuff like that, right? It's like,
Yeah.
is this the right way, or do I, or or like, do I have to tell them that, okay, look, I'm fucking off right now, and or do I do the, or what they call the gray rock, the 180?
Right. Yeah, that worked.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I
Sorry
hear the
about
beep now. It's all right. This is one. Yeah, you're saying?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's like, you know, that's just the nature of life, you know. So you're talking about like having gone to therapy and stuff, you know, which I have in the past too. So it's a combination of knowing yourself, knowing what your patterns are, knowing where, you know, maybe I have to grow, or things that I need to work on, or things, you know, that like, how am I contributing to maybe things being less, you know, I don't know, less communicative than they should be, or less healthy. So it's your own accountability, combined with then also assessing, well, you know, something doesn't set right with me. You know, I've done my own kind of inventory of what am I contributing to a situation. But then there's also that inner impulse or voice that tells you, no, you're not being treated right, or you're not being given respect that you deserve. So it's like a balance of doing that and honoring that kind of voice and that assessment that tells you, like, yeah, you know, get out of this because it's not good for you. You know, and there's something better, even though it can be scary, there's something better awaiting you, just ridding yourself of this situation.
But okay, the guy, like I said, I've just started therapy, and there is one thing that scares me, like am I telling the right things? Am I assessing myself the right thing? I got this very, because I've been introduced to therapy for a long time ago, right? And everyone's like, hey, you should go do it. Right? You should go do it. It's a very, like, someone told me, like, they related to my call, they related to my jokes because they're clinically depressed. So
Yeah.
so I guess I'm like, okay, look, I may be clinical, I may be depressed in one way or another, right? I'm undiagnosed. Let's go to therapy and see how it goes. But that they kind of like took me like 4 years, 5 years in, like then I would go in. First time I gave myself a shot of therapy, it took me a little while to say, hey, maybe go for another one, because the call was like, hey, we are kind of busy right now, we'll do it the next month, or we can do a group one for you at the end of the month. And I'm like, someone else might need it, right? So I kind of like push it to until like 2 or 3 years later. Then I say, okay, let's do it and see if I'm all right.
Yeah. I mean, you know, if you get enough reminders that, you know, something's not right, either friends telling you or family or, you know, intimate relationships kind of indicating, like, or you just get a sense yourself, like, I'm not doing well. I need a little help, or I need some clarification. You know, only you can, like you said, it's that self-assessment is part of, you know, growth and part of therapy, really, because and I think that's when you get to a healthy place, is you have that balance of trusting your own voice, trusting your own instincts, combined with being open to the possibility that you're wrong.
I'm looking at the therapy session, and I'm not so sure how to endorse, how to look at, oh, this is a good therapy session for me, right?
You gotta have the right closer, the right closing bit. You know, you leave them laughing. That's always key.
Oh man, I wish I could call back sometimes with my closing bit. Yeah. Man, Gary, you're too sad. Still.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. This is one question I want to ask. but because I know a lot more about you with Teachers Lounge.
Yeah,
I
Teachers Lounge, the web
I
series.
yeah, I remember obsessing about Teachers Lounge.
Right.
I remember looking at the Kickstarter, right? When I was a lot younger, when I was like, I don't know, I don't know how it came out, right? I think it's because of the comedians that was being portrayed in as well, right? And how, maybe the question I want to ask is how, like how the like the how is the whole thing set up, like how do you, like, why,
How was Teachers Lounge set up?
yeah, like okay, so it comes from the idea, right? Like why do Teachers Lounge in the first place?
Why do it as a web series?
Yeah.
Well, I think I had the idea for a while because I was a teacher for
Oh, okay.
5 years. Yeah, I taught music
Mm,
in New York, so that was kind of the basis of grounding it in that autobiographical aspect of my own life.
mm,
And then my best friend Hollis James, who I went to college with and started in comedy with, we were a duo for
mm,
a year or year and a half. So there was a long kind of pedigree with us working together, our friendship and our working relationship. So then I think we had pitched the show around a bit, same kind of thing of what I was talking about with that frustration with the industry and pitching, whether it's a comedy special or a TV show.
mm,
So we had pitched the idea and it was not picked up anywhere,
mm,
for various reasons. Some of them said like we already have a teaching show, which I thought was, kind of ridiculous because like there's a million like cop shows or law shows or what have you. So it's like, oh, you're doing one teacher show, so that's that. I mean, it's whatever. So it might have also just been their way of saying no in passing.
mm,
But whatever it was, again, you can't dwell on it. So the frustration then gives way to what do we do? Like what's next? So Hollis and I, we are usually pretty good about figuring out, what can we do with this?
mm,
So with Teachers Lounge, we decided to put together a Kickstarter and to shoot. Well, actually, I should go back because first we shot 4 of them.
mm,
I think that we just funded ourselves. So we shot 4 of them with one director, and then we wanted to shoot the remaining 6 that we had written.
mm,
And that was when we did the Kickstarter to get, because we wanted like the full block of 10 episodes that we had written. And we figured it'll have the dual purpose of completing a project that we love and seeing it done the way we want, and doing it grassroots from donations from people who are interested in helping. And then it will also serve to, show the industry, like here's something we created, and then pitch that around rather than the abstract idea. Maybe this will show them what it could potentially be. So then we were funded, and that was one of the exciting things about the Kickstarter was the money came from like around the globe, like people like Jonathan Atherton in Singapore. He was so generous, and people that comedians I had worked with all over the world, Germany, the UK, and obviously all over the States and Canada, and just fans of my comedy. So that was kind of like galvanizing and affirming. Just to know that all the work that I had put in and the relationships that I had, that there was support out there, so that it really felt good. So then we had the funding to do the remaining 6, and we shot that, those 6. And it was really just, it was one of those things where everything just went so well, like the casting, I was able to get we were able to get all the people that we wanted. And for those who don't know, the basic premise of the web series is I play the music teacher, my buddy Hollis plays the janitor, and we're always just hanging out in the teacher lounge of the school. And then different comedians come in playing faculty members. So like Jim Gaffigan plays the nutritionist, and Dave Attell plays the school photographer. Judy Gold plays the gym teacher, on and on. So we did 10 episodes, and it was just one of those kind of charmed experiences where everyone was so great. And, Hollis and I wrote it, leaving a lot of room for improvisation. So like we kind of borrowed from shows that we loved, like, maybe Curb Your Enthusiasm or Dr. Katz, going back further, where comedians were kind of playing themselves, or a version of themselves. So that's what we did. We kind of gave them bullet points of like, well, here's the basic arc of the story. Here are the things that you have to hit. And then after that, just, go into whatever you feel like talking about, and we'll just react and we'll bounce off of you. And yeah, just like everything went really well, so we were really happy and satisfied with the final product. And we felt like, wow, this really shows the kernel or the seed of what this can be, so yeah, it was a dual thing of very happy with the final product, but also the potential for, maybe this can be a show, maybe it can be something.
Because I remember watching it, or I went back and watched it again. I kind of look like it has to be a stand-up comic kind of like series. You can have actors playing like one or two, but it should not be like a major part of it. I feel like there has to be like a stand-up like driven shows, right? Where because we kind of know each other's the tempo, the timing, the cadence of comedy as well, right? Like in there, I was looking at Louis Black, Jim Gaffigan, right, and I was looking at Judy Gold's cadence, and I'm like, oh, you can't if you replace it with say an actor, right? Cadence wise, I feel like there's a lot of improvisation in between. So I'm like, oh, you can't replace like the actor as an actor. You have to get like a comic to come in.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of baked into the DNA of the show or the web series that it has to be comedians because they have such a specific point of view that's honed over decades. Judy's been in business 30 years, Louis Black, probably close to 40, so yeah, I mean, their sensibility is so honed to a razor's edge. So it makes it easy to write for them, and I'm friends with these people too, or coming up through the New York scene. So there was an intimacy to it as well, a friendship, I think that's hard to replicate too, is the heart of the show was, Hollis and I have been friends for a long time. And then these comedians I've been friends with for a long time. So there was an intimacy that was kind of baked into the show as well, that we weren't just casting actors, like you said, these were friendships. So yeah, that was what we saw actually potentially, should it be picked up or should somebody take a chance on it? We saw it as a great venue for stand-up comedians. And then potentially branching out to maybe, because Ted Leo is a musician friend who did one of the episodes. So we saw the possibility of like maybe some musicians, maybe some athletes, just having like, whoever. I mean, you can pick somebody, LeBron James, obviously as like a big possible, star. Maybe he comes in and he's one of the parents of a kid in the school, or just dropping people into this little world that we created could be fun, so that was what we were hoping.
But have you ever thought like rebooting it, like, because I know it has ended for some time now, but do you want to bring it back to like, hey, let's reboot it and do an mini series for maybe like Teachers Lounge too, where, because everything seems to go to be back on YouTube again, like or even some guys say, hey, can I just I love this idea and would love to do it again.
Yeah, there hasn't really been too much thought for Hollis and I to reboot it, because Hollis lives in LA now. I'm based in Connecticut now. So yeah, we haven't really, it's such a big endeavor, to do those 10 episodes. They're each like 3 to 5 minutes. So it's like the whole web series is about an hour of content and entertainment. And I encourage people to go watch all 10 of them. They're on YouTube. But my point being that so much work goes into those 10 episodes. Like, we had to, with it being like an independent DIY kind of thing, we were wearing many hats. I was wearing the hat of producer and casting person. I was the liaison to all the actors because I had the relationships and friendships with the comedians. So so it was a lot of work. So it's not as easy as just saying like, yeah, let's do it again. It's I wish it were that easy. And also the money aspect, it would have to probably be another Kickstarter, so so it's a lot of work. It's challenging.
So here's this question, right? I've never knew how difficult it is until I decided to produce like content regularly, right? I decided to produce say an audio podcast regularly, right? I've never knew how difficult it is, because being on the outside, we can, look, is this all you have to do? Just pull the camera out and shoot, like without remembering that there's the editing, and before that there's writing, right? You need to contact the people. You need to say, hey, this is the story arc, and even before that, like writing out the story and allowing how much work to be in there as well. Like how much work do you have to put into like a single, say, like the episodes are? Because I remember the episodes like 5 to 7 minutes. I know it's less than that.
I'd say they average like 3 to 5 minutes for probably in that 4 to 5 minute range that the episodes are. So they're quick, but a lot of work goes into them, because like I say, we kind of established the beats of like, it starts with Hollis and I just alone talking about something, then in walks the guest, and then their storyline or their angle opens up, and usually we're kind of in the position of kind of just listening to them and letting them just go off a little bit, and then we kind of tie it in, so there's a little bit, and that comes with doing it too. The formula starts to show itself. So that was what was exciting too, was some of it is discovery and figuring out what's working and what allows people to shine. So I thought we did that really well. Like we really gave comedians a platform to shine and for their voice to authentically come out, so there were episodes that I felt like we were really hitting our stride, like, the Dave Attell episode where he's the photographer. He was magnificent. The Jim Gaffigan episode with he and Jeffrey Joseph Jeffrey Joseph is a great comedian and actor, and he played like the dean who comes in. So, I felt like certain episodes really started to hit the stride and really excited me for what the show could potentially be. But the most gratifying thing for Hollis and I was we had this idea, we saw it through, and like you say, there's so many obstacles and there's so many challenges to completing a project, financial or just logistics. We had to secure a school in Manhattan. Luckily Jim Gaffigan knew somebody that this old school that was no longer in use. So we were able to get in there and shoot for, it wasn't that long, like maybe 3 days we shot those 6 episodes for the Kickstarter.
Okay.
So we just kind of planned it like Michael Che, it was kind of, like I said, it was kind of charmed because Michael Che was, he had just been cast on The Daily Show.
Oh, okay.
So that was a big deal. but that only lasted like maybe I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I can't remember the exact amount of time, because he I mean, talk about like somebody who's hot. Then he got cast on SNL.
Uh-huh.
So, but little known fact in showbiz, in between those two, he did Teachers Lounge. You know? So, there was like a window of time where he was available, and he came in and shot the episode. So we had Michael Che, you know, we had just Jim Norton, so many great, Todd Barry, just one great comedian after another. And the feeling that Hollis and I had was, not only did this project meet our expectations, but it surpassed it, because everyone was so great, and there was a familiarity with everyone. It was a great experience.
I feel like if you would turn back time, you would do it again, right?
Yeah, well, you know, that was the plan. The plan was to pitch it around, which we did. We pitched it around a second time. And to get back to what we were talking about earlier, that was when I hired representation again, because I was like, okay, we've got Teachers Lounge. I was just about to shoot, I think, Senior Class of Earth at that point, or maybe I Did It. I can't remember which it was. Maybe it was I Did It. Yeah,
I did it again.
I Did It was
I Did It. Sorry, yeah,
second
one. Yes, yeah.
So I think I had those two projects like completed in the chamber. I'm like, okay, now the time is right to, you know, strike while the iron's hot. I've got two things I'm proud of, two things that I'm trying to pitch. So like, let me let go of my kind of hard-headed, I can do everything myself approach. Let me hire. So I took some meetings and wound up hiring, working with a manager and an agent. But again, it was like this really frustrating experience, to just give you a window into the business. So I had sent the agent, and I think it was at William Morris. It was like one of the one of the, you know, high-powered Hollywood agencies that you would think like, great, I'm with William Morris, this is going to be a go. You know, I'm going to have the weight behind me that I need.
How big?
So
here's a question, right? How big is I heard of William Mars. I always thought that he was I always thought that because I can't mistook him with another comic from the UK who has the same name, but I realized William Mars is another guy. So
it's an agency. It's an agency, you know. So it's like, I mean, I'm sure it was a guy in the 1950s or something, but it's just like this big monolith, big, powerful, Hollywood agency.
Okay, because I can't heard of his name around, right? And I heard of the company names around, and like I said, I mistook as another, because that comic went through Singapore, and then went to the UK. He had a big show. He had a big show about joke stealing, about swapping sets and stuff like that with another comic, right? So, but I come and that's why I kind of like, oh wait, there's another thing called William Mars, and I didn't know how big it was until like I saw those guys that represent.
Oh yeah, no, they're the, you know, the movers and the shakers. It's the big leagues, you know. So that's why I was so excited to be with them. And but just to illustrate the point, I sent my new agent maybe 3 episodes of Teachers Lounge. I sent like 3 of the what I felt were the best, and then we were scheduled to have a phone call. So, you know, a week goes by. It's the day of the phone call, and the first thing the agent says is, "Oh, Ted, you know, what would you think about moving the show from a school location? How would you feel about changing it from teaching to something else?" I was like, how would I feel about it? Like I was a teacher, it was autobiographical. I know that world. That's where I came from. It's like, what do you want it to be, like astronauts or something? Like, this is what I know. This is who I am. So that was the first question. So already I'm like, okay, this is like Hollywood, right? So then the second thing was, oh, well, I haven't watched it yet, but once I watch it, I'll have a better idea. I'm like, you haven't watched it. Each of them are like 4 minutes long. We scheduled this phone call. I mean, you could have postponed the phone call by 4 minutes and watched one of them, So, yeah, so that was like just another window into, and this is after having met with them, and they're like, we love you. We want to be in the Ted Alexandro business, and we're big fans. And then, they don't even watch, so that was like another kind of lesson of like the frustration. So I wound up leaving them too shortly thereafter, because it was, again, that kind of instinct thing of like, am I just going to be happy because I'm with William Morris? Or am I going to like get the hell out of here because fuck them and they're not doing anything for me? Like, could you be more incompetent? Could you be more disrespectful than to not watch? And, this is, and mind you, in the meeting, I told them the thing I'm excited about is Teachers Lounge. We just shot it. I think it's great. Very passionate about it. Very excited about it. Teachers Lounge and my new special. That's why we're here. That's what we're in business for. And they didn't watch it, So yeah, it was frustrating. It was almost laughable because it was so absurd.
But here's this thing, right? I suppose experience like this shape what you kind of like perceive or expect from the business itself, right? There are a lot of times when I remember there's a few of my friends are like saying, hey, I would love to help you with this, I'd love to help you with that, but in the end it didn't happen, and I'm still the only one that pushing everything.
Yeah.
And even and even as this podcast going on, right? Like there are some local comics whom say, okay, I'll do this for you, I'll do that for you, but in the end they didn't do anything, right? Like nothing come to fruition, right? Like I kind of expect it, like, okay, if you are with me, I will not assume anything will happen until it after it happens.
That's right. Yeah, that's kind of the way the business is. Like, you have to be prepared for the worst, but put in the work so that, hopefully the best happens. Yeah, and you develop that core of people that you can trust, So like I said, Hollis and I had a long-standing friendship and working relationship. So we knew, like we're like brothers. We knew we could count on each other. And as far as my comedian friends, I knew that I could count on them once I locked them in and say, like, okay, we're shooting on this date or whatever. Judah Friedlander was another great one. Rachel Feinstein. So yeah, all these people, they were, comedians are always, especially once you've known each other a long time, they're very eager to help one another. If you have a project or if you have something, if it's an easy text or phone call and they're like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I'm happy to do it. So that was not the hard part. The hard part is after, like, trying to sell it. And maybe getting back to what we were talking about earlier, those were the frustration of nothing happening with either the special or Teachers Lounge. It gives you another opportunity for self-reflection of like, am I doing anything wrong? Like, could I have done anything differently? And it's almost like two different aspects. As far as the creative side, I couldn't have done anything differently, nor would I have wanted to, because it all like came together really about as well as we could have hoped. But then the business side, I do question, like, maybe I'm hard to work with. I don't know, as far as they're concerned, because I think they are used to people who are just compliant and afraid of them and just happy to be in the room. Whereas, like, I consider myself respectful and, not difficult to work with by any stretch. But I also consider myself someone who will speak my mind and say, like, here are my expectations. Here's what I'm trying to do. And if I feel like you're not really, if it's not reciprocated, then I'm going to move on. So I don't know. Maybe amongst industry, maybe I have a reputation that I'm not easy to work with, because I think a lot of comedians are easy to work with in that they'll wait around forever and just do what they're told, and maybe not rock the boat or not push back or whatever. So,
Because I would have guessed like people who are comedians or even artists themselves would do a little bit more pushback than we are kind of like in the creative side of things where we kind of like, okay, this is, you need I would say a spine to say or a clear boundary to say, hey, this is my project, this is how it's going to look like, this is how it's going to be presented like, because it's out, it's in my head, right? Like the things that works out, that works.
Yeah. And by the time I did Teachers Lounge, I was not 25. I was probably, closer to 40, or thereabouts. So I knew who I was as a comedian. I knew who I was as a person. I had just a stronger grasp of like you said, having a spine. So yeah, there's always time for self-reflection and wondering and kind of, second guessing, but ultimately I don't really have any second guesses, because I feel like if you act on your integrity and you act on your impulse and do have, a spine and have your boundaries, then, let things fall where they will. And that's the way it goes.
Here's a question, right? That I'm going to deviate away from the business. I would like to ask, right? Because you said you are a music teacher before. You were a music teacher before going into show business, right? Did you do other jobs before being like a music teacher, like being other than being a teacher?
Well, yeah, I mean, like as a teenager, like my first jobs were working at Burger King. I caddied at a golf course for a summer.
That sounds fun.
Some days it was, most days not. I wasn't built for it. Yeah. But it was a good learning experience. I was young. I was probably 15. That was my first job. And then, Burger King was shortly after. And then, I did, I worked at a supermarket. I worked at like a department store. So I did a lot of like kind of just jobs to earn some money before I started a teaching career. I didn't want it to be a career in terms of like until I retire, because I was doing stand up at night. So teaching was for me like a secure way to earn a living, that also I was done by 3:00 and I could go do open mics or, work on comedy.
But so here's this one thing I want to ask, like when do you know, like, when you get the feeling like, hey, you know what, teaching is not going to be my work anymore. I'm going to do this at night, do this full time, accommodating full time at night, and just go, okay, look, this is what I want to do now. Like I already knew this is where I'm going right now and stuff like that. Because I'm 31 this year and I'm just trying to figure out like is this, I'm an Uber driver right now, right? And I'm thinking, okay, when will it be good to take a plunge to do whatever creative endeavor that I'm trying to do, right? Or the create or whatever thing that I would love to do right now, and say, right, this is a good time to jump.
Yeah, I think every artist goes through that dilemma. Every artist who's just like paying the bills with some form of work, you have that dilemma of, when is it a detriment? Is it holding me back? When should I jump into full time or making it like my central focus? And that's different for everyone. Like I'm of the mind that, it's important to have a roof over your head and pay the bills. And, it's important to be responsible. but everybody's different. Other people might just jump and be like, the jump and the net will appear kind of thing. I'm more of a planner. Like, the moment will present itself where you've put in the work, and again, that intuition will start to resonate where, like, okay, either I know it's time, or I can't stand to do that other job another day. So some combination of the two. That was kind of what happened with teaching. Is like I was done with teaching. I had done it for 5 years more or less, and I had done like Conan, and I had started to get some TV stuff and started to get some road work.
Yeah.
So I was starting to eke out a living with comedy. So I probably stayed on even a little bit too long with teaching. I probably stayed on like another half year than I should have. But yeah, just to answer your question, like that's something you have to be aligned with your intuition and run it by your trusted circle of friends, a partner, therapist, whoever, the people that you run things by. And then you'll get feedback, and ultimately you'll have that sense of like, now's the time either to move on from, the Uber job or teaching, or to move on from the thing that it maybe is frustrating you, or that you're seeing, okay, I'm starting to maybe make a little money, or the potential exists to make some money with the creative thing. So yeah, it's an ongoing kind of process.
Here's because I watch your special, right? And I count it kind of like shows a part of the family, I guess, and I think that's where one of the other places that I want to go. Like what kind of family do you grow up with? Because I know that you have like you have like 4 other siblings as well.
Yeah. So I'm the second oldest of 5, 3 boys and 2 girls, in that order. And yeah, I mean, I grew up I think I was lucky that I had both parents around, and they're still married, still alive, very loving, very supportive. We were all in the arts. We were all in like plays. Our church had like a community, like summer theater program. They would do like a musical every summer. So whether it was like, West Side Story or Grease or what have you. So it was just like a really fortunate thing that like we could spend our summers creatively, just doing stuff that we like. We were all musical, took piano lessons, stuff like that. So like we were artistic minded, all 5 of us, to varying degrees. And yeah, so my family was really my support and my best friends. And I felt like fortunate, not to say that we didn't have our problems and issues and things that had to be worked through, all that stuff. In fact, I should mention, to keep with the theme of therapy, we went to family therapy as adults. My sister brought it up as a possibility because I have a sibling who's bipolar. So she said, that she read that family therapy could be helpful for families dealing with bipolar. So we all went to therapy for, I don't know if it was like 5 sessions or 7, I can't remember. But that was a cool thing as adults, to be in a room where, in a sense, you're kind of like, you're there as, 7 individuals. It's not like, although obviously I'm there as Ted, the son, and Ted, the brother, but we're also like, we're adults. We're, and we're talking about like roles within the family and roles that I assumed that I maybe didn't want to assume, or, things that happened. So it was pretty interesting and beneficial, and I think unique in a lot of sense that 7 adults would make time to do that.
Do you have any bad feelings after coming out from the therapy session, and then you work out, oh, finally there's something to talk about for the next therapy session?
Yeah, it would vary. Sometimes you would have like mixed feelings about things, or sometimes you would have clarity and feel relieved about other things. So yeah, excuse me. I think it came at a good time, at least for me. I mean, I'm sure everybody had their own experience, but I think overall it was beneficial for me. It was helpful towards maybe forming boundaries around certain things, and also just not, realizing that you don't have to maintain the roles that were assigned to you or that you fell into in your family when you were 5 or 10 or 15. Like that doesn't have to define you or those relationships forever. Like you're older now, so you can shed the things that no longer serve you, and you can grow beyond them and establish boundaries, and then the relationships can grow from there.
I'm gonna ask if this I don't think this is the right time to ask, but you know what? I think that what kind of roles do you think you assume when you're younger? Because when I first watched a special, watch your first special, the one that where you used to have hair, right, and without a beard.
That one, yeah, as much as you want.
So what kind of roles do you assume? Because you at the point of time you weren't as intense, or you weren't as cynical as who as senior class and even cut up.
Yeah. Well, the first part of your question would be like the roles that I assumed within my family were kind of like the responsible one, the caretaker, the one who could be depended upon, kind of like the rock of like, that I'll be there and I'll, take care of things or whatever. So, I think that's part of who I am. But also at times that can be draining, and it can be like you overextend yourself, or you don't know when to say no to things, so yeah, that was part of growing up and learning, if those roles of like the caretaker or the dependable one like overextend me or make me feel depleted, then I don't want to do that. So I have to learn when to say no and when to establish boundaries and prioritize myself, so that's kind of what I grew into in my, probably in my 30s and 40s. I kind of shed some of those things that I felt were not beneficial to me anymore. But as far as like persona and stand up and stuff like that, I think that's probably by virtue of age too. Like, because when I was 25, 30, I was so excited and like hell bent on just like, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna figure this out. And there's so much energy behind just like, you're still, in a sense, you're trying to convince yourself like I can do this, and this is going to be, this is going to be it, this is going to be me, this is going to be what I do. So there's
you usually
so
call
much...
them hope, right? Like it's called.
Yeah.
That comes out from the end of Pandora box, which is kind of ironic when we have it when you are younger.
Yeah. There's so much hope, and there's so much like enthusiasm and determination. But then as the years go by, and I proved it to myself, like, yeah, I can do this, and I am good at this. But I don't just define myself by this solely. And I also don't just define myself by like, maybe in the early going, like my only goal was I was more high energy too, then I think I became a little more deliberate in my pace. And I still have moments where I'm animated and physical and stuff like that. But I think I became, better acquainted with my style and using my instrument and my voice. And like you said, talking about other things that, as far as I'm concerned, are part of being human, like talking about the world, talking about frustrations, talking about larger systems, You know, I wouldn't have done that when I was 25. I don't think it was even on my radar, you know. But as you grow as a person, you know, I think comedians gravitate towards the style that they need to, like, it's in them. Like you have to, this is what you have to do, you know. I don't think anybody makes a decision necessarily. Maybe you make a decision to like to be more clear in, you know. So I made the decision of like, yeah, I don't want to just be like high energy or physical. I want to be all of the things that I feel, and all of, I want to, you know, I want to evolve into, so that I feel like my full self on stage. So, you know, that's a process.
I think it's also a style you like. I remember like, or at least you grow into, right? Like I realized at the age of 5, at the age of 18, here I am, right, trying to be a wary guy, right, trying to be a guy of tie up the world and, and angry at whatever that is. Then it kind of morphed into like a because I kind of like morph into, I would think like a more slower pace, the way I speak as well. I'm not sure that is it because of it's a conscious choice or like that. But you have like, imagine like you're 25 years old going up on stage, right? And jokes change, your style, your point of view change. It tend to like very different when say you're 40, 50 years old talking about stuff versus 25-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it is dictated by your life experience, what you've been through, what you're passionate about. You know, I was single and just solely focused on comedy at 25, 30. Now I'm 52 and married, and I have 2 kids. So of course life is very different, you know, my priorities are very different. But that doesn't mean you can't still bring all of that to the stage and still explore it, and you're engaged with the world in a different way. So one of the great things about comedy is that you should be evolving, and your worldview should be evolving, and, you know, the way that you're engaged and the way you articulate things should evolve as you change. You know, I never wanted to be static in life or on stage. I didn't want to be static. Like, oh, he's the guy that does this, or, you know, like, I just wanted to be myself and to explore ideas and to be funny, you know.
Have you ever watched your first special or your first set and just, fuck, why am I that kid with that stupid idea in that head, and just go
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like I cringe sometimes when you look back. I think everybody does, you know, whether it's an old photo or, in our case, it's that next level because it's video of, you know, of us being vulnerable and performing and trying to make people laugh. So yeah, you know, but to be honest, like if I look at my first Comedy Central special or my first special, As Much as You Want, I kind of mostly feel like pride, you know, like, because I'm like, those are good jokes, you know. It's like, it's a different person, and it's a different style, and it's almost like I'm watching my kid in a way, you know. It's weird. It's a little bit out of body. Like I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that kid. I'm like, you know, look at that guy. He's excited. He's trying so hard. He's funny. Yeah, so it's funny to look back.
I don't know. I'm afraid if I were to look back at my video, right? Of course I don't have a special yet. But looking at my younger self, right? What the photo, at the photo, whatever I have, I'm like, fuck, like this kid is gonna be dumb. Like when people ask me, right? Like what would you tell your 18-year-old self? I'm like, don't continue this anymore.
Well, you know, I mean, with comedians, sometimes, a lot of times, if you do continue, it's not a choice. It's just like it's in you. You know, it's like it's such a lifestyle. You know, like going to the clubs every night, or you know, as many nights a week as you can, and writing every day or as often as you can. It's a lifestyle, you know. It's like when you watch figure skaters at the Olympics, they didn't just show up that day and start twirling around. They've been doing that every day, waking up at 6 and twirling around and doing it with their partner. And you know what I mean? Like, so that's what comedy is. When you see somebody special, that's not the first time they're telling those jokes. They've told them hundreds and hundreds of times and gone to some shitty gig in the back of a bar, and they've gone, you know, on the road, and so like, that's what develops all of those muscles. So you're seeing the results of just so many years of preparation leading to that, you know. And so that's what comedians have to do. Like, if you're not on board for that, then you will get out, and God bless you, you know, like there's a different life to be led. But if you love that and you just keep coming back, then you're a comedian.
This is one thing when I just go like, will people ever go? Will comedians ever go back to normal life? I know people. I know comedians have quit the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Before their career started, even after their career started, they just go, fuck it, I'm going to be like a normal person for once, right? I found a chick that I like. I kind of want to settle with a family, right? I have kids, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get a job as a consultant, right? Whatever that means.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's always a consulting job to be had.
Yeah, so it's like they've quit and maybe get a job and feel like I just really wonder, like, how hard is it, or how difficult that switch is going to be if you just go, fuck it, I'm going to be an average Joe.
Well, you know, everyone's different. I think for a lot of people, there's joy and liberation in that, you know, because if you're the same way we talked about leaving the Uber job or leaving teaching, and the exhilaration, you know, that I felt leaving that and going to, people feel it the other way too, where they're like, this is a grind, you know, and I'm tired of it, and it's taxing, and it's not satisfying anymore. And then they shift, you know, I've seen people shift into other aspects of the business. Like maybe now they write, or they do directing, or they're a showrunner for a sitcom, or, you know, they shift away from stand-up. Or I see them leave the business altogether, and like you said, they're a consultant, or they're an accountant, or, you know, whatever they might be. And these are people, you know, I often think about like NBA players when they talk about like a guy they played with in high school, and they're like, yeah, this guy was better than I was, but, you know, whatever life circumstances, like he just went off the rails or off the path, and they make it to the NBA. But it seems like every NBA guy has a story about, oh, this guy was the best in high school, or this guy was the best in my neighborhood. And in the same way with stand-up, I remember plenty of guys and girls in the early going that were so funny at open mics, and then they just like stopped doing it, or did other things or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. Who knows like what the reasons are? You know, life is funny, and the circumstances of why everyone chooses to do what they do. But one thing is for sure, if you're going to be a comedian for the long haul, you have to be all in, because it's too hard to do if you're not really into it.
I'm like, how that brings the question back to what does it mean to be in all of it? Like what, like, do you go back and set clear boundaries, go, okay, look, this is where if it passes across this line, I'm getting out of it anymore, or do I just and go back to normal life, or is that considered going or putting all effort to it? Because or do you just go, okay, this is going to be my career, I don't care whether I die in this mountain of hopes and dreams, right?
That's spoken like a true comedian. Yeah.
or do I just or and hopefully I find success, right?
Yeah. Again, it's different for everyone, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with like that inner voice and that intuition that kind of you know, that propels you in one direction or another. So if there comes that point where you feel like you're not happy, or you're frustrated, then you have some decisions to make. It's like, well, is that because I'm not working hard enough? Do I not have a focus? Like, could I be working harder? Because that's, the answer to that is usually yes. I could be working harder. But then it also comes back to, well, is that what I want? Like, is it just that, like, I'm done with this? And some people are, but comedy is not. It's not a life in the arts is not a straight line. There's going to be times when you're really inspired and you're really motivated and you're putting in the extra work and you feel a jump in your productivity and in your inspiration and all that. And then there's going to be times where it plateaus and you just kind of feel frustrated and you're not that engaged and you maybe feel like you're going through the motions. Just like any job, or just like, I think that's common to human beings in general, but especially in the arts. You can't always be at a peak experience. It's just not possible, but if you're feeling frustration or you're feeling the questions that you're talking about, then it's time to assess, like, well, what can I do differently? How can I rearrange my schedule? How can I rearrange my life? What are the roadblocks that could maybe open up the flow of getting me where I want to be?
Which is worse, having the idea of plateau, right, or the plunge? Because there are a lot of times where I just feel like sometimes I'm okay with stagnancy, but I'm not okay with, sometimes it's just plunged downwards. When it comes
things
to
are going down,
yeah,
things are
going bad. Man, that feeling is a horrible feeling, right? And stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's probably worse. Like a plateau, at least you're on familiar footing, or you're just feeling like you're in a holding pattern. But if you're plunging down, that's hard. And it also depends on how severe it is. Like, is it like a mental crisis? Is it something where you need professional help? Or is it just like things are crumbling and the latter can actually be an opportunity if things are falling apart, or if a project fails, or a set bombs, or, all these different examples of what can happen. That can be an opportunity, because it can also be liberating if something crumbles, and you feel embarrassed or frustrated or whatever. Those can be moments where, again, you assess, like, well, I guess I'm still in this because I'm still here and I still love doing it and I'm not going anywhere. So if you have to accumulate some of those experiences, both in life and certainly in comedy.
And there'll be another 10 minutes.
You need those. What's that?
And there'll be another 10 minutes.
Yeah, right. You have another 10 minutes.
You have another 10 minutes. Yeah.
Sure.
The whole month of crumbling down, that'll be 10 minutes.
Well, because people can relate to that. I mean, who can't relate to everything going wrong? Who can't relate to everything crumbling or life not meeting your expectations? That's what it is to be human. So, yeah, you have to a certain extent, you have to rebound from those types of things. But not to say that there are certain turns in the road where it's like, all right, you do have to assess, like, am I in the right place? Do I need to shift?
But I've known people who doesn't. Okay, I'm not so sure whether it's all right to say this, but the idea of having people knowing what failures are, it's kind of like it kind of like amazes me, because I think there are a few people who don't know what failures are, or don't understand the failures of the degree of failures that we all have, right?
So what you want to explain to people, like, don't you realize you're a failure?
No. It's more like, because there's this one time I did a show at a very, very a very fancy place, right? It's a country club, right? People came in, people dressed well. When I walk through the door, I can smell. That's where money is, right? If I rob this place, that's
It sounds like it sounds like a bad environment for comedy, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it is. It is. I walk in there. I remember telling this line, having this premise in mind, trying to figure out like what to do with it. The so that this line is like, oh, in order to convince someone to get a job is not to tell them about the money that they can get to pay the bills at the end of the month, right? The reason what the sales pitch, that the most effective sales pitch that you want to do to get a person to get a job is to ask them, how much free time do you want to hear your insecurity screaming at you, right? So I remember telling that line. There's this look of confusion from almost everyone, like saying, "What do you mean by getting a job?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, those guys don't need a job. Like they have in this country club. So I'm like, the degree of failures tend to be very different with different people.
Oh yeah, yeah. I remember doing, wealthy people tend to be, if not the worst, among the worst comedy audiences. If it's like a homogeneous group of wealthy people, it's almost like they don't know how to have fun. Like they're even suspicious of fun. Like why are we sitting here listening to like this person? Like how are you going to make me money? Like this, like why am I giving you my attention? Like there's almost like the whole thing is foreign to them, and I've done exactly what you're talking about: country club gigs. I've done parties for like 50th birthday parties for like bankers or finance guys, and it's all wealthy people. So like comedy, like they look down their nose, like, and like you say, like lines that usually work in a club or work in a heterogeneous group where it's like it could be people that are across the socioeconomic or class spectrum. The joke works because people get it. But if you're in a group of like wealthy people, like it's funny because sometimes you don't realize it until you're in the moment and you're saying the joke that you've said 1,000 times, but then you realize like, oh yeah, this crowd is not they don't relate to this at all.
I can imagine, like I think people kind of like, I'm not sure whether is it like a fraud, like a fright thing, like a Sigmund Freud thing, where you tend to laugh at pain when you get to see the pain. And I think that poor like people, like I think I hang out with people who are in the working class, right? Like you tend to see the pain a little bit better. You tend to like react to the pain that we see a little bit better compared to people, say, who are in the country club drinking whiskey, right? And
And
holding on
also
like,
more self-deprecating, right? Like more able to laugh at themselves or laugh at life.
I'm like, I think that's how I discover the comedy, the principles of comedy working. And to me, it's such a weird thing when I see the degrees of failures with different group of people and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, like we were saying, for jokes to work and for jokes to be honed to the point that like they stay in the act, and like this is going to be one of the jokes in my next hour or whatever, a joke that stays around. It has to go through all those tests. It has to go in front of the wealthy people. It has to go in front of the comedy club, the bar, the college, all the different gigs that we do, the outdoor venue, the show in a high school cafeteria, like it has to like stand the test of time so that it's bulletproof. And not to say that it kills everywhere, like sometimes you don't want a certain group to laugh at a joke, and you're okay if they don't. It's like, all right, well, that's not for you. And
have you
I like
met
it. I like it anyway.
have you met that situation before? Like, I suppose you have met that situation before. Like do you, like, have you told a joke that you hope that certain group of people don't laugh at it, but they still laugh at it?
Well, I mean, I don't think I ever have the thing like I hope they don't laugh at it, but I sometimes I have an expectation like I don't think they're going I don't think they're going to. And so that's kind of the high wire act of like, I like this joke. I think it's funny. I know it's funny. I know it maybe makes a certain point, or I know what I'm doing and I know what I'm attempting to do. And if you've been doing a joke long enough, you know pretty much all the aspects of how it could go and whatever. But yeah, I don't go in like trying to like that. I don't care if people laugh, but yeah, sometimes within the course of a set too, and as the rhythms of the room kind of establish and reveal themselves to you, you do get a sense as you begin each joke, like, all right, they're not gonna they're not gonna be on board with this, or I might have to sell this one a little bit or massage it in a certain way. Yeah,
But
so all those things are almost like split second realizations as you're performing too, so it's a experience.
because there are times where I read that I was looking at the intention of jokes, right? Or the intention of my jokes. Hopefully, it will get through like a certain audience, and hopefully it doesn't take the wrong way, right? However, there are also jokes where you kind of like test out the room a little bit and just go, oh, if I tell this joke, the intention, the reason why I told this joke, the meaning behind this joke is going to be very different, and it's going to be very weird in a sense where
Yeah,
the intention of you laughing is not the intention that I wanted it, or is not the way I try to bring it out is not the way I wanted it to be.
yeah, of course. Yeah, I've had that experience too, where if I was making fun of maybe a particular point of view or something, maybe I was being sarcastic, making fun of something, but they're laughing at it for the wrong reason, thinking that I'm like perpetuating that. Yeah. So then, sometimes in those moments, like I'll make another comment to just kind of correct and say like, I'm not trying to be part of the team. I'm actually making fun of the team.
And that's the to me that's a very scary thing to go into in a sense where that this it's I don't know, there are times I just go, all right, I'll just let you take back whatever you want it to be. I'm not going to comment on it.
Well, I mean, I think what you just said is a great thing to say on stage too, because what that does is it lets them know that they're misinterpreting. So for you to say that, sometimes I love those types of things where you're like, I'm going to let you take that however you want. But you may be misinterpreting, but those kind of little asides sometimes can do the heavy lifting for you, or communicate just as much as the joke does.
Okay, I guess this is a good way to end. Like take away however I want. All right, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure, Gary. Great talking to you, man. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun talking to you as well. I don't know how do I talk to you in the first place, because I'm like, okay, so this is what I've been obsessed about for, because I've known you as a comedy act. Like I know you stand up for some time, for a very long time actually. I'm like, because I think I know you before Teachers Lounge, I guess.
Okay.
Before the existence of a Kickstarter of Teachers Lounge, or just before the thing, and I was really obsessed about your stuff as well.
I appreciate that, man. It feels good to hear.
Again, thank you for doing this.
My pleasure, Gary.
Okay.
Thank you for inviting me.
Hey. All right.